CQ, 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 calling CQ. This is WA4LLR, Dave in Burnsville, North Carolina, calling CQ, the Old Friends Net. CQ, CQ, CQ. CQ, the Old Friends Net. The Old Friends Net meets 3 times weekly on this frequency. Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m., Thursday mornings at 9 a.m., and Sunday evenings at 6:30 p.m. The net is conducted in the amplitude modulation mode and in the roundtable format. This net's an excellent place to look for parts, look for information, maybe trade a piece of gear or two, mainly focused on vintage type equipment. However, any station that can generate an AM signal is welcome to participate. So CQ, the Old Friends Net. Those wishing to take part today, give me a call and come now.
4LQ.
WB4ARK.
KN4R.
K4GDN.
WB4NKL.
K4JAL.
W4NEC.
W4VRO.
Alrighty, I have so far N4LQ, WB4ARK, KN4R, K4GDN, WB4NKL, K4JAL, K4VWD, W4MEC, and W4VRO. Do we have other stations? Alrighty, I'll run down one more time. LQ, ARK, R, GDN, NKL, JAL, VWD, MEC, VRO. One more standby. Any further check-ins? All right. Good morning to everyone. We've got about 43 degrees and low overcast up here in the eastern part of Yancey County. We had a grand total of 7/100ths of an inch of rain yesterday afternoon, but that's better than none, so I'm thankful for it. Looks like very chilly weather coming tonight with a low of about 23, and high today I think is only about 45 to 47, somewhere in there. So that's the conditions that prevail. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll go down to Shelby and let the fun begin. N4LQ, WA4LLR.
WA4LLR, N4LQ, in Shelby, the city of pleasant living, running the multi-Elmac AF-68, who is also renowned for manufacturing the best garage door opener. And as far as I know, that's about it. Anyhow, it's 55 degrees, and that's supposed to be that way all day. We didn't get a drop of rain, and it's drier than last year's bird's nest here in Shelby. Over to you, buddy. WB4ARK, N4LQ.
N4LQ, WB4ARK. Okay, Steve. Well, we've got similar conditions here. No rain overnight, and dry as a bone. So we're looking for some rain today, but I don't think we're going to get it. Temperature is 56 degrees, and supposed to drop by Halloween time. So we'll see what happens. Running the ART-13 today. R390A, and a horizontal dipole up about 60 feet. So with that, over to KN4R, WB4ARK.
Hey buddy, very good, WB4ARK and the old friends. This is Brian, KN4R, Cheryl's Ford, where the conditions are absolutely the same, and I'm going to be heartbroken if we don't get some rain down here today. After the net, I'm going to get outside with my garden hose and water everything I can, and hopefully help bring the rain on. Maybe I'll wash the car, I don't know. So all the signals sound terrific today, especially Ray down in Georgia. Sounds wonderful. So Ray, I wonder if you're going to Lawrenceville this weekend. Over to you, George. K4GDN in the group, KN4R.
KN4R in the group. This is K4GDN, and it's, I guess, in the mid to upper 60s here in Myrtle Beach in the third wall, dirty Myrtle. And it's very overcast. We may get some rain here sometime, but it is very dry. I'm running the Viking 2, about 100 watts, and listening on the HRO 50 T1. And I'm going to be picking up a BMW 5100B tomorrow. Going to be a little bit of a long-term project. It hasn't been used in about 20 years, but it's been taken fairly decent care of. So looking forward to that. And I'm also going to be picking up later on this month a Collins 30R1. And I've been reading on the internet where several people have changed from 811As to 572Bs as far as the tube's concerned. Even one guy went from 4 811As to 2 572Bs, because the plate dissipation on the 572B is much higher allowable than the 811As. I'm just curious, anybody had any experience with doing that? And if so, what did you have? So let's see here. We just got back from Pigeon Forge, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was so much different than down here. I really almost feel like it'd be a good idea to move up to Sevier County, Tennessee. It was really nice, pretty, the people were nice, and the place was extremely clean. Not at all like Myrtle Beach where there's trash on the roads all over the place. Anyway, with that, we'll turn it to Cliff. WB4NKL in the group, K4GDN.
K4GDN, it's WB4NKL. Okay, George, good copy. Glad you had a good time at Pigeon Forge, and be glad to have you in Tennessee. 43 degrees here, and we did get a quarter of an inch. What I didn't think was much, but it sounds like quite a bit compared to what everybody else got in the rain there yesterday. So it's helped out a little bit, but it's been real dry here too. Ray, sounding good. I was wondering, like Brian, if you were coming up to Stone Mountain. I planned to come down Friday and spend the night there at the Hampton Inn at Snellville. So hopefully I get to see you maybe. So I'll send it on around. Let's see, it went to Jimmy, K4JAL, it's WB4NKL.
WB4NKL, K4JAL. Well, it's 43 degrees here too. We got a little bit of rain last night. Hope we get some more today. All my leaves are down. I mowed them on the weekend, but there's a few out there. If I was conscientious, I'd mow them again, but nope, I ain't going to do it. George, be careful buying 572Bs if you're going to from China. I ordered a set and had to send them all back, and it took about a month, but I did get my money back. But, it's counterproductive. I wouldn't order Chinese 572Bs if I was you, because I had my experience. So there you go. K4VWD, I think you're next. K4JAL, over to you, Lee.
Okay, Jimmy, thank you. K4JAL, this is K4VWD. Well, I've got a question for y'all this morning to chew on. I mentioned it Sunday. If you got a radio that you like and you like to look at it, but you don't ever hardly turn it on, how long do you let it sit before you turn it on if you want to keep it working? How long is it? 6 months, a year, or what? The other question is, it probably has to do with the capacitors in there. I doubt that the resistors, tubes, etc., don't need as much exercise as the capacitors do. So once you decide to turn it on, how long do you leave it on to give them some exercise? I wondered about that. It's 56 degrees here, no rain. Weather Bureau says we're under severe drought here, so maybe we'll get some before long. So Charlie, here she comes, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the luncheon on Thursday. W4MEC in the group, K4VWD.
Okay, Lee, K4VWD and the old friends, W4MEC. Real good signals here. George, you're doing good too. Glad to hear you made it back from Pigeon Forge area there. Let's see, caps. I'll mention that. Well, I've got a bunch of radios that sitting on a shelf up here, broadcast sets and less expensive ham gear like S38s and things like that, some VHF tube radios, and I haven't turned them on over a year. So I noticed that, of course, if it's got the original caps in it, you never really know if it's going to work right again, but all of these have got modern capacitors in them, and I'm fairly confident they will come on without an issue. But I'd say, I don't know, I really couldn't put a time on it. I'd say maybe a year, I don't know, and let it run for 30 minutes or so, just enough to juice the cap back up, maybe an hour. It's kind of like a clock shop full of wind-up clocks, you know. Does a guy go in there every morning and wind them all up and let them run, or does he just let them sit? So I think a radio with new caps not as bad as one with the older 1950s and 60s caps in them, which are running on borrowed time anyway. And they comment about 572Bs. I think everything comes from China. Even if you go to was it RF Power? Is that the name of the company? They have sets, and they're supposedly, if you buy them from them, they check them before they ship them. So, and they've got a guarantee. So I think it's RF Power. But one of the things about the 30L1 is the power supply can't really handle the key down like a bigger one would. I think that's the Achilles heel to the 30L1, and why they rate it, why they say don't use it for AM or FSK, strictly sideband and CW. But it can do 1,000 watts input power, but I don't just think it can really handle the key down there. And what's the tube? 811 65 watts per plate, and I think the 572B is like 160 or something like that. So yeah, you gain a little there. With 4 of them would be 540 watts of 640 watts of plate dissipation, all 4 of them. So it's a lot of safety factor there, but. That doesn't necessarily mean you can run them a lot higher or a lot harder, because it ends up smoking the transformer. Anyway, so that's 2 cents on that. Down to Ray, W4VRO in the group, W4MEC.
W4MEC into that. W4VRO, very good, Charlie. Well, Dave, 23 degrees, it's wintertime up there, sounds like. It was 50 degrees here this morning at first light, and it's going to get about low 30s tonight, and then below freezing Wednesday night, Thursday night, and high in the mid-50s or so. It's about time. Leaves are falling and we don't have any color. Have not had a frost here yet. Steve, AF-68 sounds good, and Buddy, that ART-13 sounds good. You've been on some other rigs and they all sound good, but then when you put the ART-13 on, it's different somehow. Sounds good. The conditions are great. Couldn't be any better, I think. Just wonderful conditions this morning. Brian, your signal is very strong, stronger than usual, and sounding great. To answer your question, Brian, and Cliff's question about Lawrenceville, that's one hamfest that I really enjoy, and it's close by. I have to go through Atlanta, but I can be there if I leave really early in the morning and miss the traffic on a Saturday morning. It's not incredibly bad to go through Atlanta. Other times I'll avoid it altogether. But I was planning to go. I'm having second thoughts about that. I'm not certain I will. But sure would be good to see you and Cliff and a whole lot of other people that are going there. That's a wonderful place to visit and meet people. It attracts about everybody that's around this area. It's a good hamfest, regardless of the weather. They've got plenty of space inside if it's raining. But I think the weather will be okay. We wouldn't be lucky enough to have some rain, I think. Jimmy, good strong signal. And Cliff, your signal very strong from Tennessee this morning. And Lee, that's a good question about non-use of radios. I have a Collins S-line here that with duplicates on most of the gear, but it's getting into that category. Once in a while I make myself turn it on, but it's getting very little use. So very interested in Charlie's comments and any other comments people have about radios going downhill if they're not used. The rig this morning is the rig I enjoy using very much. It's the Johnson 500, and it's loaded to 350 watts carrier, and it likes to run about as much as I like to use it. So I appreciate the reports. George, I wanted to comment. I copied you about 60%. That's better than usual, and really good to hear you this morning. I was glad to hear Charlie's comments about changing the tubes, and I was going to say the same thing about the power supply. I have two 30L1 amps here, and they're wonderful amplifiers. I bought an S-Line new in 1971, and that was my first use of the S-Line. And I used, at that time I was chasing DX on CW, nearly all CW, and I loaded that 30L1 to about 800 watts DC input, and I ran that thing for couple of years chasing DX, and then got tired of chasing DX, but never had a minute's trouble with it. Now, chasing DX on CW, the transmission time is very, very short, so I wasn't worried about doing any damage to the amplifier. I don't think the tubes ever got really hot. But as Charlie said, if you change out the tubes and gain some power capability there, you're still stuck with the same power supply. I tell you what, I'd think long and hard before I modified any Collins S1 equipment. You might find a little stage in a receiver somewhere or something that would do better, and if you don't go back and reconsider every stage before it and every stage after it, you're probably going to do more harm than good. So it's good gear, and it'll serve you well. I wouldn't go to the effort or the expense. You double your power, you still haven't done a whole lot. So I would choose the original setup. That's my comment for the day. Let's see, that's all the notes I had, and I've talked too long. Back to you, Dave. Booming in here this morning, sounding great. WA4LLR in the group, W4VRO.
All right, Ray, fine business. Great signal up here as well. Let me take a standby. Do we have any others that would like to join in? Come now. All right, I guess we've got everybody. Well, great round, good copy on everybody. Steve, the AF-68 sounds good as always, and Buddy, the ART-13 sounds wonderful. Brian, I think it's a great idea. Go wash the car or get some rain. It usually works. Well, there's one other option. Go put up another antenna. And if you'll get out there and start working on an antenna, you're guaranteed to get some kind of weather. George, the Viking 2 is doing a good job. You're between S9 and 10 over up here. And fine business on getting ready to get the 5100B and the 30L1. And I know a lot of folks that have swapped out the 811s for 572s and not done any modification, and usually the the 572s last on, and you don't worry too much about them since they're so much more rugged. But like Jimmy was saying, be careful of the source. And Cliff, I guess you're the one that won the prize on rain. You got 1/4 of an inch, where the rest of us got, well, a few drops. Lee, I try to cycle my rigs once a month. It doesn't always work that way, but that's what I try. Turn them on for a few minutes if I'm not going to use them. But there's some I overlook inevitably. And good deal on the luncheon on Thursday. Charlie, you're booming as always, and Ray, no frost down there yet. My goodness, here it is 1st of November and no frost. Of course, you are further south. I was looking at an interesting article on space weather today. They were talking about 20 years ago on this day. They had the Halloween geomagnetic storms because of 2 major solar flares. Cycle 23 was kind of winding down and people weren't expecting much. And back to back they had an X-17 and an X-10. And the coronal mass ejection was traveling so fast that it reached Earth in less than a day, and it usually takes 2 to 3 or more. And they lost control of half the satellites that were in orbit at that time. Some of them they were able to regain control of, some of them they didn't. But auroras were seen as far south as Georgia and California and Texas, so that was 20 years ago today. Anyway, conditions today are quite a bit more calm. Sunspot count of 62 and solar flux index of 140, and the K is 2. So that's quite a bit calmer. A few events this day in history. On this day in 1517, Martin Luther nailed his 95 thesis to the Wittenberg door. The Protestant Reformation began. On this day in 2020, Sean Connery passed away at the age of 90. On this day in 1968, President Johnson ordered an end to our bombing in North Vietnam. On this day in 1941, Mount Rushmore was completed. On this day in 1926, Harry Houdini passed away from peritonitis stemming from a stomach injury. On this day, 1922, Benito Mussolini became the Prime Minister of Italy. And let's see, on this day in 1864, Nevada became the 36th state. And that's about the size of it from this day in history. So, Steve, here it comes, N4LQ, WA4LLR.
WA4LLR, N4LQ. Let's see here. I think the Stone Mountain Hamfest is going to be pretty typical with far as weather. It's going to be cool in the morning, 38 degrees, and then warm up to 70 by noon, and that's usually the case. I've been down there and about froze in the morning, but don't think I'm going to go this year. I am going to try to make it to the luncheon on Thursday in Spartanburg to see all the old friends. Hope that everybody's going to be there, I hope. Lee, I think you're not going to really find any official answer to your question. And I think when I think of electronic equipment like we use, these old ones, I would be more concerned about the mechanical aspects, and that would include the knob, the drive mechanism for the VFO, the dial string, the potentiometers, and so forth. And I think of a car sitting for a long time and the tires kind of getting a flat spot on them. You know how they used to do with nylon tires, you end up with a lumpy tire, so you want to rotate them every now and then. But on a potentiometer, I guess if it sets for a long period of time in one place, and it's not turned on or anything, that may be I don't know, probably doesn't matter. But some of the grease and the drive mechanisms might get old after a while, and especially in like Tentec stuff. If you had any of those, they use axle grease in their PTO, red axle grease, and that tends to dry up, and it's important to run them all the way from 0 up to maximum, cover the entire dial, crank that thing back and forth pretty often. That's keeps it limber. I don't know about dial strings, if it matters or not, but dial strings worry me. I don't like them. But that's one thing I like about the Hammerlands, is they use kind of a pinch roller thing that you don't have to worry about it breaking. It could slip, but it won't break. And I sent a video out, put it on the Old Friends Net reflector to a video made by Tom, WHAI, and it concerns the modification of the 30L1 from 811s to 572s. Tom's the one that designed some of the Maritron products, and he's a highly acclaimed engineer, and he's got a lot to say about those tubes and some changes that need to be made. So you might watch that, George. Over to you, buddy. WB4ARK, N4LQ.
N4LQ, WB4ARK. Well, I guess my take on it is if you've got 811s that are in good shape, I wouldn't change them for the trouble and the amount of money that it would take to do it. I just there's a huge overstress if you're going to go up in power on the supply and all of the components on the output. So I would go with Ray. I would not change anything. I've got a 30L1, and it's in pristine condition, and I would not change the tubes. I was reading an article the other day about the dams in the United States, and the fact that many of the dams, I think there's 1,600 that have been done away with since, I think it was 2011 or something like that. And they're talking about destroying the Glen Canyon Dam. So it's they've they've done their job for many, many years, and the end is near. The need for the dams is not what it used to be. So let's see what else we got here. Well, I think as far as the weather is concerned, this is probably the driest that we've had in many, many years. The weather conditions have definitely changed here on the East Coast with the dryness. So I don't know what this winter is going to bring forward, so we will see how that turns out. The hurricane conditions here on the East Coast has seemingly changed drastically. So we'll see how that turns out. It's been a bleak year for hurricanes on the East Coast, and hopefully it will stay that way, because we don't need any more infrastructure damage. And, well, with that, we will turn it over to Brian, KN4R, WB4ARK.
Okay, buddy. Very good. WB4ARK in the group, KN4R. Wonderful on all. And I'm just sitting here thinking about firing up my garden hose, and I hope everybody else will as well. And great on the luncheon on Thursday. Let's see. Oh, by the way, I'm still running the haunted Globe Champ here. I might try slipping it back in the case, but maybe not put the front screws on today. I just don't want to kill any grandkids if they happen to sneak up here. So, but I am looking forward to spending time in the shack today, and I got a lot of projects I need to work on. And George, sounds like you're having Christmas early down there with the BMW 5100 and the 30L1. And Lee, as far as the old receivers, William Culpepper, W4BZ, who was a PE, he had a roll-around bread cart in his basement. He had a 1946 house, and it had a built-in bomb shelter. So down at the bomb shelter, he had a bread cart, and he had probably 6 or 8 receivers on there with a Variac, and he had them running all the time, somewhere around 30 or 40 volts AC, and I cannot remember exactly the number, but and he would come in every once in a while, and sometimes he would fire them up, but he definitely left his receivers on and cooking at a low voltage, and I don't know if that was good or bad, but that's what William did. So let's see, and Dave, thanks for all the information about the weather and solar weather and history. I saw an article yesterday that said that the current solar cycle might be finishing up early and peak as early as like October of next year. So who knows? So anyway, let's keep it going, enjoying it. K4GDN in the group, KN4R.
KN4R, the group, this is K4GDN, and appreciate all the comments about the 572Bs. My concern was in the case I had a little lemonade go out rather than replace all 4, I might just do it with 572s. I don't intend to run the thing hard, and I realize the power supply really is a bit of a limiting situation there. It's really pushed kind of hard. But the ruggedness of the 572s, if I ever had to go through the whole thing, I'd probably change the 811s, 572s. I would not do any particular modifications. And I have read the articles and seen the internet article that I think it was Steve mentioned about running the power up, but I don't intend to do that. I think I'm going to try this thing where they put 4007s in series and put them in that key line to raise the bias. I idling bias on the tubes, particularly for sideband and CW. And that's sort of an external thing. That's not something you would have to do internally. I would probably do it externally. And another thing I'd like to do is in that same line, I'd like to put in a meter to see if I can see grid current. I realize the relay current's there, but I know what it is to begin with, and anything above that's grid. I like watching grid current with grounded grid amps. It seems to change a whole lot more than the plate current does, particularly with tuning. And as far as tuning them, I look at the output power, and that's what I really base my tuning on, although the 3001 has a rather unique circuit there. But anyway, I don't intend to run the thing hard. I may run a little AM with it, but nothing particularly hard. Just looking at the ruggedness of the tubes, and I do realize you got to be careful where you get them from. Let's see, what else here? And as far as the old radios, I haven't had that much trouble with electrolytics, but for the most part, if it's a radio that's been sitting around a while, I would go through and replace the electrolytics before I ever plug it in. The modern electrolytics are a whole lot more dependable than the older ones. I know with this 5100B that I'm going to get, first thing I'm going to do is replace all the electrolytics before I even plug it in, because it has been sitting for about 20 years, although it's been covered and it's not supposedly in any bad shape. But occasionally I've had an electrolytic go out on a piece of equipment while I'm using it. I do have a number of tube-type guitar amplifiers. If they've been sitting around a while, I'll usually bring them up with the Variacs, but they've all got relatively modern capacitors that really haven't had any major things there. And as far as pots are concerned, I'll rotate them every now and again. If they get noisy, I'll squirt them with a little bit of cleaner. But sometimes you have to be careful about the cleaner, depending on what kind of plastics are used around the pots. But other than that, I haven't had a whole lot of experience with them. And like I say, I haven't had much problems with electrolytics going out. It's just from my practice with old equipment that I'm getting from a source that I'm really not sure about, or if it's been sitting a while, I'll just replace the electrolytics and let it go at that. Anyway, that's my take on that, and I appreciate all the comments about the 572Bs. My main concern was that they were much more rugged than the 811s, and that they're designed to operate in horizontal mode. Even though the 811As are also. And getting 811As now, you got to be careful where you get them from too. So with that, I'll pass it on to you, Cliff. WB4NKL in the group, K4GDN.
K4GDN, it's WB4NKL. Good deal, George. Signal's getting a little weaker, but I copied about 90% of that transmission. I'm just running the DX100B transmitter here today, so I'm not running quite as much power as usual. And well, I'd like to get back down to the luncheon, but I probably can't make it this time. Maybe next go around. Enjoyed it the last time we made it down. And a ham fest looks like it's going to be full sun, but like Steve said, it's going to be starting out cool Saturday morning. But I'll bring a big jacket, take care of that hopefully. Lee, as far as I've got a lot of radios sitting around here, and I don't try to cycle through them that often, but if I power up one that's been sitting a long time, I do bring it up on a Variac, but not just a Variac. I've got metering on the Variac so I can watch the current and see what it's see if it's pulling excessive current. A lot of people talk about bringing stuff up on a Variac, but if they're not watching the current, you still don't know that you don't know unless you just smell smoke that you know what's going on. So bring it up slowly and make sure the current's within the normal range. But I've had good luck for radio setting 10 years and bring them back out and fire them up, and they seem to do all right. So I guess every radio is a little different, depending on, like Charlie said, whether it's had its electrolytics changed or whether it's got the original ones, and you know, a lot of variables there. Go ahead, Jimmy. K4JAL's WB4NKL.
W4B, what the heck? WB4NKL, K4JAL. Steve, I'm going to watch your video on tubes, but I think I've already made up my mind that I concur with Ray and Buddy that you need to leave equipment stock, especially if it's a premium manufacturer like Collins. Radios have to be synergistic systems. Each component depends on everything else around it. And when you start shotgunning, it reminds me of a hot rodder putting a 3,000-pound car together out of mixed components and having a rattle trap. So I'm going to stay with 911s and be content with that. They seem to be working well for me anyway. K4VWD, K4JAL, over to you. 7-3, guys. I'm going to get on out of here.
Okay, Jimmy, 73. This is K4VWD, and I hope K4JAL has a blessed week, and I look forward to talking to you on Thursday morning, I hope. Well, I appreciate everybody talking about the rigs. I change my power supply every couple of months because of the big electrolytics in there, and I think it helps them, but I'm not sure. And that's why I was asking the question. I don't know how often you have to do that. How long do you let them sit without exercising them? And then how long do you run them? Well, what I do is I change my power supply for this AF-68 every 3 months or so, and run the alternate power supply. And I do the same thing with the transmitter and the receiver, and I'll use it 2 or 3 times on the net, and then I'll go back to my #1 rig. But I used to do some work for a company that made capacitors, and I asked them if they, at some point, they would walk me through and let me see how they made capacitors. And they said, yeah, be glad to. Well, they got mad at me towards the end of the job, and I still don't know why. And they never did take me through so I could see how they made capacitors. But it was a company right here in Greenville. So anyway, that's, and I don't worry about tubes because, you know, you can take a 70-year-old tube that's new in the box, an NOS, new old stock, and plug it in, and bam, it starts working right away. So I don't worry about tubes. I did think a little bit. I wonder, you know, some rigs, when you warm them up, increase in frequency and some go down. And I wonder if the variable capacitors change capacitance as the rig gets warm. I don't know whether those plates in there with temperature change makes any difference in the capacitance. But that's something I thought about. Anyway, Charlie, here she comes. W4MEC in the group, K4VWD.
Okay, Lee, K4VWD in the group, W4MEC. Real good. Well, I did take a quick look at that video that Steve sent about the 3001, and clicked through it real quick there and picked up the high points. Was amazed that he was tuning that thing up to 700 watts out with a pair of 572Bs. I think he was using a pulsar, though. I'm not sure. But he said he wasn't concerned about the power supply. So I don't know. I've always read that that was always the critical part of that particular amp. And running AM down in the 100 watt or so out range, 150 watts, about as much as you wanted to do. But the problem seems to be moot, because I also went looking for 572Bs. I can't find any anywhere. DX Engineering doesn't have them, or Parts doesn't have them. MFJ isn't selling them as replacement tubes for their amps. Nobody has them except perhaps eBay, so that might be the reason. You might have to give that particular pursuit up. So let's see, what else do I have here? I forgot to mention it was about 50 degrees here and partly cloudy, and I didn't get my, Sunday I went out to Northern Tool and got a skater tong there for logs, and I tried it out yesterday, and in about 15 minutes I did what it took 3 hours for me to do Saturday, so that was a good purchase. I glommed that thing on that 10-foot log and hooked it to the tractor, and out it came, no problem. I didn't have to dig in the mud. That's what was taking so long, was digging in the mud to get the darn chain under the log so that I could get it out of the mud. And I was even using I even brought my darn engine crane. It's like a, perhaps you're familiar with engine cranes. It's got rollers on it, a big old arm, and a solid hydraulic cylinder. I put it down in there just to get the log picked up so I could cut it into sections without jamming the chainsaw. It was a major pain in the rear. But this time I said, I'm going to go spend this $100 on this thing, and it paid off on the first pull. So, but just as I got busy, I got a call. My daughter was in the hospital down in Columbus getting an IV for something to do with, she had a real bad migraine that was just took her out, and so my wife and I had to go down there, retrieve her, take her home, and one of us had to drive the car back. So that took up the rest of yesterday afternoon. So in about 15 or 30 minutes, I had done 3 hours worth of work. So I'm hoping to get out there today and finish up. And we did not get one drop of rain, nothing. Not even a mist, and I was watching it on the radar all day yesterday, and I would have swore that front was going to come through here and dump us pretty good, but as it got closer and closer, and about the time it said the rain would be in 10 minutes, I looked again, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky, there wasn't a cloud on the radar. It all just disappeared, so so we're still dry as a bone here. So anyway, let's see. All right, onward to Ray, W4VRO in the group, W4MEC.
W4MEC and the net, W4VRO. Very good, Charlie, and good all the way around. Really good comments, good net this morning. Steve, you make a great point about mechanical problems. We hams, I think, usually think in terms of electrical and electronic problems with the gear. But it's certainly true that mechanical problems can be just as important and just as frequent. So that's a good point. And Cliff, you've got a great setup with measuring, watching that current as you gradually bring up an old piece of gear. I'll start thinking about setting up something like that. You know, I have been relying on the old faithful smoke test. The only problem with a smoke test is it tells you there's still something wrong, but it's too late. And another thing, Steve, in the mechanical problem area is switches. I think you mentioned switches, but I have noticed in having bought several old receivers and take them home and they work, but one thing many of them have in common is when switches are turned on and off and so forth, the noise comes through the audio. It creates an audio pulse there, and from dirty switch contacts. So another thing that needs to be turned through its entire range many times are the switches, and that helps keep them clean, I think, and perhaps minimizes or eliminates that audio noise when it's switched. Good net, Dave. Thank you for calling the net, and good to hear everybody. If I go to the Hamfest Saturday, I probably will go Saturday morning for a while. Hope to see some of you there. Brian, I used to see you at almost every Hamfest for years, but it has been years since I've seen you. And that's probably because I moved down here further and don't go to as many Hamfest up that way. 73 Stall. Thank you, Dave, for calling the net. W4LLR, W4VRO clear.
All right, Ray, W4VRO and the net, WA4LLR, 73 to Jimmy and 73 to you. Let me take a quick standby. Is there any late check-ins this morning? Come now. All right, nothing heard. Okay, we will do a 73 round, and Cliff, you'll turn it to Lee, and Charlie will be tail end Charlie. And Ray, I have to agree with you that the thing I run into is problems with the band switch. My problem is my rig's set on one band forever, and then if I sell one of them, the poor person that wants to use it on a different band, once they take it off 80 meters or 40 meters or whatever, it doesn't want to work. So that's good advice. We need to cycle the band switches and the other switches fairly frequently. I know I had more problems with HQ170s like that. That band switch really did not like to not be cycled. And it seemed like if you let it set a month, it started showing issues. But maybe that's just the ones that I've run into. Let's see. Okay. Well, that's about it. We'll go ahead and do a 73 round. I certainly appreciate everybody's participation today. So let's do a 73 round. M4LQ WA4LR.
Yeah, I could use some precipitation here. And I think it doesn't do a tube any good to cycle it off and on. It's probably happier just to leave it off. The more you turn it off and on, the shorter it's going to last. But flip those switches, twiddle those knobs, and make your boat anchor last a long time. Let's see, I think, yeah, there's a few things in rigs that benefit from upgrading and getting away from the factory. Well, I think of the AF-68, the Elmac and their weird battery deal using a Zener. That has benefited me as well as others, and I don't think the Zener's ever going to run down. And I had one battery short out, strangest thing I ever saw, but K4YBC brought it down here, and it turned out to be a shorted battery. So we threw a Zener in there, and that should take care of that forever. And I think of the Ranger and the Chernobyl resistor, moving it out of the VFO, and a few things like that over the years that have been beneficial. LED bulbs, that's kind of a nice thing sometimes to upgrade those. Rectifiers, solid stating them. It's got, it's not a total improvement. It does reduce the heat. It does increase the voltage, which shortens the life of everything. So that needs to be looked into. I found some 572Bs. Amazon sells them for two for $130, and the brand name is PSVANE, PSVANE, whatever that is, probably Chinese. DX Engineering has them in stock for 4 of them for $369. Seems kind of expensive. And of course the Chinese have them for various and sundry prices, and they're all over eBay. So they're still out there. You can still get them. Anyhow, that's about it from here. We'll say 73's, turn it over to George for his final comments. K4 GDN, N4LQ.
B4 ARK.
I mean ARK.
Okay, Steve. N4LQ, WB4ARK. All right. Now we got that straight. I would go along with what you said about the band switch. Definitely. That is an issue with the SX101A. And if it sits on one position, it tends to like to stay there, like Dave said. And the Elmac Zener, that's a good modification. And so I think then, as far as Cliff was saying, just throwing a variac on in line with your receiver or transmitter is probably not, without monitoring either and or the voltage and current, is probably not a good idea. I've got meters on mine, and that it does make a big difference knowing what the current should be and monitoring that as you bring the line voltage up. I don't think that 28 volts on your line is going to do much as far as your rectifiers are concerned, and especially if you have filament type tubes. Tubes don't start conducting till they get up much higher. And I don't think that filaments of tubes is an issue. I haven't seen very, very few issues with filaments of tubes. I haven't had a filament burn out in, I don't remember how long it's been. It's a very, very, very long time, if ever, with a filament completely burning in two. I've had some sets that I took under the wing of reconstruction and found a filament or so open, but that could have been due to someone messing around with the filament circuit in something like BC348, changing it over, and I did have some issues with a set like that. So that's my take on it. Monitor your current and your voltage on your variac, and work your band switch from time to time. Actually listen to the stations, get it tuned in to a signal. So that's my take on it. So over to, and thanks Dave for doing the net, and thanks everyone for participating. And over to Brian, KN4R, WB4 ARK.
Okay, buddy. Very good. WB4 ARK in the group. KN4R returning. All right, very good. Well, I'm going to go outside and get the garden hose fired up, and look forward to being in the shack today, I hope. And if you happen to be there, leave a receiver on 3715. Maybe we can have some follow-up QSOs here. So I've enjoyed it. Great signals, and I hope everybody has a great week. And for those going to the Ham Fest, good hunting and safe travels. So back to you, George. K4GDN in the group. KN4R 73s.
Okay, KN4R in the group, K4GDN. And yeah, band switches are an issue. I've got a Ranger 2 that I'm the first person to actually put it on the air, I think. And it's sat for years with the band switch on 80. And I literally had to go in there and dissolve the grease to get it to move when I got it. And mechanical issues are a big deal, particularly when things like the band switch operate other things other than switching the band. And I'm thinking about my National NC300. The band switch also rotates the slide rule valve, and there is some alignment issues there. You got to be very careful with that. It uses a ball chain, and if you break one of those, you're really going to be in a mess. However, the NC300 uses the same size ball chain as the military does on dog tag, so they are gettable. Before I forget, Dave, thanks for calling the Jet. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully we'll be in here on Thursday. We survive Halloween down here. It's kind of like that all the time down here. It's sort of a freak show 24/7. So with that, I'll say 73 is turning on over the cliff. Y'all have a good day. WB4NKL in the group, K4GDN.
K4GDN, it's WB4NKL. 73s to everybody. And that's another thing, buddy. When I'm bringing up a receiver, it's got a tube rectifier or something. I usually I've got a solid state plug-ins for the 80s and 5U4s and 5Y3s. I usually put a solid state rectifier in while I'm bringing them up until I get them up close to full voltage, because you're not going to get much B plus at the low voltage, and if you put the solid state in, then you can bring them up and send voltage to all the circuits. And let's see, that's about it from here. Now, on the modifications, I don't usually do modifications, but in some cases, a lot of the parts that we've got available now, they weren't available to the original designer. So, you know, if they had a band, they would have, you know, some of the circuits would have probably been a little different if they'd had those parts available. So, some of the mods I'm okay with, like the Zener and, you know, some of the stuff where we've got improved parts that they didn't have. 73s and enjoyed it. And let's see, I was supposed to turn it to Charlie, I think. W4MEC is WB4NKL. Thanks for calling it, Dave.
Very good, Cliff. W4NKL, W4MEC. Okie dokie. Mentioning the mechanical parts and things like that, and band switches. Yeah, this transmitter, this TX1. I've actually gone to 10 meters and operated it on TX1 and on 10 meters and didn't realize that the band switch did not want to rotate, and it took a bit to get it going. And it's a kind that actually, I think maybe Johnson did this. There's a part in there when you turn it as gear driven, and it turns a pin that rotates a shaft that has a bracket on it with like a wedge cut out of it, and the shaft fits in that wedge. So it's all mechanically activated, and that's a lot of resistance there that hadn't been operated in a while. So I think I actually had to take it apart when I wanted to do it and break everything loose and re-lube it. It had been so long since I changed bands on it. But yeah, and of course they'll work just fine. My receiver worked just fine here without touching it on 75. But when you want to go to another band, it is Crackle City, and you have to rock them back and forth to get them to operate like that. So I guess in addition to capacitors and stuff, the mechanical parts are need their exercising also. So let's see. We will see everybody hopefully on Thursday. I'm getting ready to send out an email here with to remind everybody, and And we'll talk to you on Thursday morning and see you Thursday a couple hours later. Some of you, anyway. The Ray checked out, so that goes back up to Dave. And 730 WA4LLR in the group, W4MEC.
All right, Charlie. Very good. W4MEC, WA4LLR. Real quickly, any final comments anybody would like to make before we close the net out? Come now.
This is K4VWD. I got bypassed, and I want to say 7-3, God bless. I do appreciate all the comments about the capacitors and running the rigs and whatnot. So thank you, Dave, for doing the net. 7-3, God bless everybody. I look forward to talking to you on Thursday. WA4LLR in the group, K4VWD.
All right, Lee. Sorry about that. I was on the phone with my son, or I would have caught it. But glad you jumped back in. Thank you, one and all, for participating in today's net. Good signals, good conversation, a lot of good information. So everybody have a great week. Lord willing, we'll catch up with you on Thursday, either on the air or in person. So 7-3, God bless, and have a good one. Stay warm. WA4LLR, Burnsville, North Carolina, close.